Hello and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video with me, Oddworld Inhabitant, as your host. So the last video we specifically talked about the Leman Russ squadron, which is in the heavy support section, and today we're going to cover the other options in the heavy support section, which honestly is mostly made up of artillery. But there is also one non-artillery unit in there. So if the Leman Russ is obviously a very iconic unit, but the artillery section also has a couple of really iconic old style Imperial Guard units which have been around for a while, and it's got a few new ones. And I would say artillery is the third most famous thing that the third thing the Guard are most famous for, I should say. So the first one is guardsmen, the second one is tanks, and the third one is artillery. They're the three bread and butter things that the Guard are renowned for in 40k, both lore-wise and fluff-wise and on the tabletop. Now, in this new codex, I should say, it's not really that new, it's 2 or 3 years old now, the artillery section of the heavy support part of the codex did take, I would say, overall a bit of a beating. We gained one unit and lost 3 or 4. They've moved to Forge World now. We lost the Griffin, the Medusa, the Colossus. They're the 3 I can think off the top of my head. The Griffin, I'll just briefly talk. The Griffin has sort of been replaced by the Wyvern. Arguably the Wyvern is much better than the Griffin, but the Griffin was a cool model. I own a Griffin model, so I used to love using it. Don't get to use that anymore. I have to proxy it for a Wyvern. The Medusa was an amazing anti-armor. It was a piece of kit. It fired a small blast temp. If you could upgrade it to Bastion Breacher shells, and you could fire a small blast template that had like armor bane, and it was strength 10 AP 1. Oh, it was insane. Really, really premier bit of anti-tank, which is obviously what you really needed when you were facing down lots of tanks in 5th edition. And the Colossus was just designed to kill Marines. It was strength 6 AP 3, ignore cover, large blast. But that's what we don't have anymore. What we're left with, and I'll cover the artillery first, is the first piece of artillery is the good old, venerable, been around since the beginning of the Guard, Basilisk mobile artillery piece. The Basilisk is a good all-round, jack-of-all-trades, master of non-artillery piece. It suffers from being, I would argue, about 25 points too expensive. It is 125 points, and I really think it should be 100 points. What are you getting for your 125 points? Well, you get a vehicle which is ballistic skill 3, front armor 12, side armor 10, rear armor 10, hull points 3. And it's open topped. So the thing is fragile. But what you get is, you also get a heavy bolter, searchlight, smoke launchers, and earthshaker cannon. The earthshaker cannon has a ridiculously long range. I don't even know its maximum. I think it's like 300 odd inches. It's crazy. Let's just find out now. Earthshaker cannon, there you go. It's minimum range 36, maximum range 240 inches, strength 9, AP 3, ordnance, barrage, large blast. Now, what you may be thinking is, that minimum range, 36 inches, does that mean I can't shoot it if my opponent is within 36 inches? The answer to that, as far as I'm aware, is no. You can still shoot it. The minimum range 36 inches, I believe, applies to its barrage rule. So barrage allows you to shoot at targets that are normally out of your line of sight. So you can use the Basilisk to shoot things that are out of your line of sight. However, if an enemy is within 36 inches, you can't use the barrage rule. You have to fire direct. You have to fire directly at them, which means if you are shooting your Basilisk and if there's an enemy unit within let's say 24 inches away from your Basilisk, and you can't see it, you can't shoot it. If there's an enemy unit that is 36 inches away from your Basilisk and you can't see it, you can still shoot it. Okay? That's how I believe it works, but that could easily be a throwover from sort of 5th and 6th edition. I haven't used Basilisk in 7th, so I don't know if that's changed. But as you heard, you get Strength 9, AP 3, Ordnance. So this thing is actually, it can do work as an anti-tank unit. Because it Strength 9 Ordnance, 2d6, pick the highest, and it's barrage, which means you hit your opponent's side armor. If you're firing this thing indirectly, let's say a Predator tank, you get 2d6, pick the highest, and you only need to get 2s to glance. And that's really good. So the Basilisk is actually kind of a cheap anti-tank unit, but it's so fragile. And the problem with it having such a minimum range, such a large minimum range for its indirect fire, means most of the time you will be actually shooting it directly. And that means you're going to have to see your opponents. And if you can see your opponent's units, then those units can see you. And most things can kill a Basilisk quite easily. So that's why it's kind of expensive. It should be 100 points just because most of the time you're not going to get to use its barrage rule. But, you know, it is what it is. You can take them in squadrons of 3s, but you know, you're not really going to do that. So the next unit is one that I've mentioned before. That's the Wyvern. I'm pretty sure it's Wyvern. Some people say Wyvern. I don't think it matters too much. This is a replacement for the Griffin in our codex. It is, again, all the artillery pieces are, well, not all of them, but this one is also armor 12, 10, 10, 3 hull points, tank, open tops. It is only 65 points. And for this is honestly, I don't use them all that much just because I like to run pure infantry, but I understand why other guard players say this is the best unit in our codex in terms of points, you know, bang for buck. So you get 2, it's important to remember, 2 twin-linked Storm Shard mortars, a heavy bolter, searchlight, and smoke launchers. So what are Storm Shard mortars? Well, they are rape incarnate. A Storm Shard mortar is 48-inch range. It's also barrage, but it's not got a minimum range. So an enemy unit could be 2 inches away, 1 inch away, and you can still barrage them. Okay, so it's 48-inch range. It's only strength 4, AP 6, but it's heavy 2. Barrage. Blast. Okay, well, interesting. So we get 2 small blasts. Ignores cover. Oh, wow, okay. Shred. Oh, yes. So don't forget, that is from a single Storm Shard mortar. This tank comes with 2 Storm Shard mortars. So you are firing 4 small blasts, which ignore cover, which have shred, which have barrage. So the fact that it's only strength 4 easily is made up by the fact that you're firing so many of these little templates, and you have shred, which means rerolls to wound against fleshy targets, which is good. Don't forget, barrage means that if you, let's say you have a librarian in a random Space Marine squad, just a character or a heavy weapon, what you can do is you use barrage, and because you're twin linked, you get to reroll it to hit roll, and you just keep placing the center of the template on that character's head, on that heavy weapon's head, on that special weapon's head, and you'll probably rack up about 6 or 7 wounds which have to be taken on that guy, because barrage is resolved from the center of the blast, which means it has to be taken on the guy the barrage, the template is centered on. So if that's a special or heavy weapon, he's not going to get a lookout sir, he's dead. If it's a character or an independent character, they've got to pass lookout sir rolls. If they don't, those wounds start going on to him. It's a very, very good unit. Most, I would say 9 out of 10 Imperial Guard players own a pair of Wyverns because they're really good. Sort of compete with Hellhounds and Leman Russ Eradicators for their role, because they also ignore cover, they're also designed for taking out infantry. So my argument would be is if you already have Hellhounds in your list, if you already have Eradicators in your list, you don't really need Wyverns. You're going to be spending a lot of points on vehicles which are designed to kill infantry. you know. So when considering taking Wyverns, Hellhounds, and Eradicators, you should take 2 of the 3. So if you really want to go down the ignores cover anti-infantry route, which is good, if you're facing Tau a lot, you want to choose, all right, I'm either going to take a pair of Hellhounds and an Eradicator, or I'm going to take a pair of Wyverns and an Eradicator, or I'm going to take a pair of Wyverns and a pair of Hellhounds. That's how you want to think about this. So what you got to remember is a pair of Wyverns, whilst being very fragile, are less points than an Eradicator with heavy bolter sponsons. 10 points less. So these things are good. Don't forget it comes with a heavy bolter. If you shoot something that's within your line of sight, don't forget you can still plink away with the heavy bolter at them. A lot of people forget that. A lot of people just go, right, I fired the Storm Shard mortars. It's like, well, hang on. It's the target you just shot at within 36-inch range, and is it within your line of sight? Don't forget your 3 free heavy bolter shots. When I've used Wyverns, I've often found that a pair of Wyverns will shred. If you're talking about a squad of Tau Fire Warriors, or Kroot, I always face Kroot when I'm playing against Tau. They'll shred the Kroot, and there'll be like 2 or 3 Kroot left in a sort of 10, 15-man Kroot blob. And then the 2 heavy bolters from that pair will chip in and kill the last few. Never forget your heavy bolter on the Wyverns. It's very important. It's not that important on the Basilisk, because most of the time you'll be shooting tanks with it. But on the Wyvern, it's very important to remember that heavy bolter. It's the equivalent of fire. In terms of wounds dealt, it's pretty much the equivalent of firing another small blast. When you think about it, 3 shots, 2 hits, 1 or 2 wounds, Anyway. Next one, Manticore. Manticore used to be the go-to artillery piece for Imperial Guard back in 5th edition and 6th edition. In 7th edition, it has fallen out of favour. Now, again, it's 170 points. This is the most expensive one that we've come across. And it used to be amazing in 6th edition, which is why it had such a high point cost. In 7th edition, this thing should only cost... Well, I think it should only cost the same as a Basilisk now. And the reason for that is the change to the vehicle damage table. Right? So 170 points, you get an artillery piece, which is 12, 10, 10 for armor, 3 hull points, tank, not open topped, good to remember. And you get 4 Storm Eagle, your war gear is 4 Storm Eagle rockets, heavy bolter, searchlight, smoke launchers. And special is limited ammunition, which means once you fire you can only fire this unit 4 times. You fire 1 rocket a turn, and once they're gone, they're gone. So if this thing shoots every turn, you're only going to get 4 turns worth of shooting out of it. Okay. Now, a Storm Eagle rocket is very powerful. Its range minimum range 24 inches, maximum range 120 inches. Strength 10, wow, but only AP 4. Now it's Ordnance D3 barrage large blast. What that means is when you go to shoot the rocket, you roll a dice, and on a 1 to 2 you get 1 large blast. On a 3 to 4 you get 2 large blasts. On a 5 to 6 you get 3 large blasts from 1 rocket. That's why it used to be the premier anti-tank unit, because you were always, on average you're always going to get two large blasts. That's strength 10. And in 5th and 6th edition, and it's barrage, and it's ordnance, so you're hitting the enemy side armor, you're rolling 2d6, pick the highest on strength 10 for armor penetration. And then in 6th edition, it really was premier in 6th edition, because that basically guaranteed you were going to do a hull point. Great. But it also meant when you roll on the vehicle damage table, you had a 1 in 6 chance of blowing the vehicle up. On a roll of 6, you blew it up. Now, the reason why they've fallen out of favour now is because they're only AP 4, which means they don't get +1 on the vehicle damage chart, which means they can't get that 7 in inverted commas on the vehicle damage chart to kill a vehicle. So they can never one-shot a vehicle like they used to be able to. You've got to remember, you fire, if you're lucky, you fire this thing, 1 rocket You get 3 large blasts. You're going to get 3 penetrate rolls on the side arm of a vehicle. That's 3 hull points. It's just dead. Potentially. But even if it's, even against a Land Raider, this is what people, when you're back in 6th edition when Land Raiders were still a big fucking deal. That's 3 chances to blow up a Land Raider. Wow. So this thing is still good, because as I just said, you can get 3 barrage, 3 large blasts, strength 10, side armor. If you're lucky, you'll one-shot a vehicle. But it's too expensive. If you could do that every turn, if it was guaranteed to be 3 large blasts, then it would be worth 170 points. But as it is, it's not got ignores cover, so it's not actually very good at shredding infantry. No point. If you're buying this for anti-infantry, no point. Go and save yourself a load of points and buy yourself a Basilisk, a pair of Wyverns. So it's fallen out of favour simply because it's not sure what it wants to do anymore. It's no good at wrecking infantry as the other artillery pieces. And it's, in terms of anti-tank, it's only AP 4. So it really, struggles to be its premier anti-tank killing unit anymore. So it's a relic almost. It's a relic from a bygone age. That's the problem with it. It's a relic from a bygone age. It needs a massive point reduction and some changes to its special rules for it to become worthwhile again. That's the problem with the Manticore, so I would not recommend that. Now, the final artillery piece that we get, it's not the final unit we're talking about, but it's the final artillery piece, it's such a joke. It's a troll unit. There's no other way of putting it. It's a troll unit. The Death Strike Missile Launcher, aka the Nuke Launcher. That's right. The Nuke Launcher. So, Death Strike Missile Launcher has actually got better armor than the other artillery pieces. It's armor 12, 12, 10, 3 hull points, tank, not open topped. It comes with a single Death Strike missile, which is 1 shot only. Comes with a heavy bolter, searchlight, smoke launchers. And it has special rules, which is no ordinary weapon and the hour is nigh. So firstly, let's look at what a Death Strike missile is. It is a minimum range 12, maximum range unlimited. That is right. It has an unlimited range. There's a joke that floats around the internet, 1D4 for example, where you could, if you want to, you could try phoning up. If you're in England, you could phone up a Games Workshop on the other side of the country or on the other side of the world. Phone Australia and say, I'm launching my Death Strike missile onto one of your players' tables because it's got an unlimited range. If those players agree to it, then you can do that. That's the joke. But it's a troll unit, so it's range unlimited. Strength, it's strength 10, AP 1, ordnance, apocalyptic blast, so 10-inch blast, barrage. Ignores cover, 1 use only. So in theory, whatever this hits, it will demolish. In the fluff, these things, are used to bring down Titans. However, in reality, it's just not worth it. I'll tell you why. It's 160 points for a 1-shot missile. You're not even got to how like you said, it's got 2 of the special rules. Let's go to the special rules. This thing, I don't use them. I don't want. I know them sort of off my head, but I don't want to say them without being 100% certain. Okay, we're almost there. Basilisk, Wyverns, Death Strike. So, no ordinary weapon. A Death Strike missile cannot be destroyed by weapon destroy results. That's good. Only delayed. Similarly, a crew stunned or crew shaken result does not prevent a Death Strike missile from launching. So even if you've got crew stunned or crew shaken, you can still launch this thing. It's crazy, isn't it? Death Strike missile this other special rule is the hour is nigh. Okay, so this means that the Death Strike missile launcher may not fire on the first turn of the game, or if it has moved earlier in the turn if it wishes to fire. So it's got to stay still, can't fire turn 1. Okay. In the shooting phase, if you wish to fire the Death Strike missile, roll a d6 with the following modifiers. Each full consecutive game turn in which the Death Strike missile has not moved, +1. Each weapon destroy result applied to Death Strike missile, -1. If the result is a 4 or more, Death Strike missile can be fired. Note that a natural roll of 6 will always result in the missile firing regardless of negative modifiers. So you got to roll a dice, and on turn 2 onwards, well, no, technically on turn 2 it's on a 3+, isn't it? So you can't fire it turn 1. If you don't move it, turn 2, it's been 1 full consecutive turn, so that's +1. So turn 2, you've got a 3-up chance of this thing going off, which is quite good actually. And then it fires this massive missile. It's like, okay, but this thing is a fucking nuke. Okay, it's described as being a nuke in the fluff. I'm not going to read out the whole passage or anything, but just take it from me. It's a fucking nuke. Yet it's only strength 10 AP 1. This is also a relic from a bygone codex, like the Manticore. If this thing was released now in 7th edition, it would be a D weapon with plus, it should be a D weapon like +4 to the D table. I shit you not. That's what it should be. Okay? Because it's a nuke. It's in the fluff. It's described. You launch it as a fucking Titan. The Titan dies. Okay, maybe you need more than one, but you know what I mean. These things are meant to annihilate entire armies. Yet you get a bad scatter roll, you won't even annihilate a tactical squad. You shoot this at a Predator, a Chimera, at a Rhino. There's a very good chance all you'll do is do a hull point and a glance. Strength 10, you're going to go auto glance it. You still need to get a 2 to get a pen. What if you get a 1? Oh, great. My tactical nuke. Do you know what it did? It glanced a fucking Rhino. Because it doesn't do multiple hull points. Oh, I launched it at a Riptide. Oh, guess what? It's got a 5+ invuln save against this. It's got a cover. I can't take cover. So if you launch as a Riptide, it's got a 5-up cover invuln save from the shield. It could be a 3-up if it wanted it to be, but let's say 5-up, followed by a 5-up feel no pain, followed by the fact it's even if it gets through both of those 5-up saves, does 1 wound. Doesn't do multiple wounds. So the Death Strike missile, honestly, it suffers from a case of, in the fluff, one of these things should be an auto win. In reality, it's 160 points for the potential to do 1 wound to a Riptide. You can't even instant death it. It's, potentially, it can't even, you launch this at a Land Raider, which Land Raiders aren't even very good. You launch this at an Imperial Knight. Launch this at an Imperial Knight, Iron Shield save. You launch this at a Land Raider, you've only got a 50-50 chance of actually doing any damage to it. 2d6, I guess, for Ordnance, but you know what I mean. 2d6 at the highest. It's just, if there's a new guard codex going to come out, I would say this would have to be D. Okay, have to be D, and it would have to be, like I said, a massive modifier to the D table. This thing has, it has to almost have its own D table. Okay, but it has to be. It always gets a 6 on the D table. It's a nuke. Okay, it is. It's so powerful. Anyway, we're not going to go on about it anymore. 160 points for a 1-hit weapon that potentially can only do 1 wound or 1 hull point to its vehicle. Not worth it. So, the final choice we're going to go on about is the Hydra. The Hydra flak tank, the Hydra anti-air tank. It's not artillery. It's not an artillery piece. It's 70 points. You get armor 12, 10, 10. Hull points 3. Ballistic skill 3. It's the first time that ballistic actually matters. It's a vehicle, tank, open topped, and it comes with 2 twin-linked Hydra autocannons. Very important to remember, it's got 2. A heavy bolter, a searchlight, and a smoke launcher. And it can be taken up to squadrons of 3, and it, that's it. Now, a lot of people don't like the Hydra because it's the Hydra. Let's have a look at its weapon. The best way to describe it is looking at its weapon. So the Hydra autocannon is 72-inch range, strength 7, AP 4, heavy 2, Skyfire. So it's a 72-inch range autocannon, which is great. Each Hydra comes with 2 of these, so it fires 4 shots because you've got 2, heavy 2, but it's Skyfire, and it's Skyfire only, which means if you try and shoot this thing at ground targets, you need 6s to hit, even if it's a fucking Imperial Knight. Now against flyers, and remember skimmers, so any Tau vehicles, any Elder vehicles, any Dark Elder vehicles, you'll still hit on normal ballistic skill against those. Don't forget, Skyfire is flyers and skimmers. It's great. If you play against a Tau player regularly, or an Elder player regularly, and they love their Wave Serpents, their Devilfish, their Hammerheads, if you're playing against Dark Elder regularly, it's great. If you play in a meta where flyers, you're going to face flyers every game, it's great. And it is also relatively cheap. So a lot of people don't like the Hydra because it struggles to shoot ground targets. In Forge World, apparently you can pay 5 points and you can give it Interceptor as well, which allows it to shoot ground targets on a 4-up. If you've got Interceptor and Skyfire, you can shoot ground targets on a 4-up. But unfortunately, this isn't Forge World, and a lot of tournaments don't allow Forge World. So we have to make do with what we've got. So the Hydra, it's good, but it suffers from a couple of major flaws. I guess this is also sort of a relic from a bygone age because it used to compete with the Leman Russ Exterminator because you used to be able to get 2 Hydras. Before flyers existed in 5th edition, you could buy 2 Hydras for the same price as an Exterminator, and they got twice as many shots, but they were more fragile. So that was the balance. Now they are dedicated anti-air. They're actually not a bad choice. A pair of Hydras, like the Wyverns, which are taken in pairs. A pair of Hydras probably won't ever let you down. If you know you're going to be facing flyers, they're never going to let you down. And even if you're not, they can generally put out enough wounds twin linked to actually be all right. But overall, they're not super competitive. So we'll finish this video quickly. We'll go through each choice and say competitive, not competitive, competitive, friendly, or not competitive. So Basilisk, friendly games only. You can make them very competitive by putting them in the Emperor's Wrath artillery formation, but that's a video for another day. On their own, in a CAD, in the Imperial Guard codex, they are usable, they're good, they're still powerful, but in a tournament setting, they're not worth it. So friendly matches only. Wyverns, super competitive. There's no point ever taking mortar heavy weapon squads. You might as well take a Wyvern, put it that way. They're cheap, they're so powerful, and they will shred anything in any infantry enemy's army. Manticore, friendly games only. They're relic from a bygone age. Manticores, friendly games only. They're usable, but they're not tournament worthy. Deathstrike, in my personal opinion, I can barely even say friendly games. They are unusable to friendly games. But they're nowhere near tournament competitive because anytime you come across a Riptide or an Imperial Knight, you're fucked. And finally, Hydra. I would say these are actually semi-competitive. They're between friendly games and tournaments because they're cheap, like the Wyvern, they're cheap, so you won't really feel the impact in your list, by wasting points. They spit out a hell of a lot of lead, and they're very good against flyers. And skimmers, a lot of the top tier codexes use skimmers, so they are worth it. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.